Two prayers I'm praying until we're together. One promise I'm keeping tonight and forever. I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end. I'll never turn, I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're with you now. We're with you to the end. We always hope the end will be a long, long time away. We're probably fortunate enough to have it to be a long, long time away, but as war forces are gathering in the Middle East and the four horsemen of the apocalypse are saddling up, that may not be the case everywhere, and it may not be the case in hoods near us as circumstances evolve. That's why Conspiracy Cafe here on that channel, downtown Toronto Bay and Dundas, is one of the best sources for prophetic news. We tell you things sometimes before they happen and get down to the nitty-gritty of issues that will affect your life. We always appreciate donations. They come in handy. We're broadcasting tonight from our secret bunker location in anticipation of greater conflict, and it appears this studio is working out quite well. And it'll be a little strange for me to get used to the surroundings because it's the first time and a little impromptu visit here. But down in Hughes Den, we're doing a great deal of service to you and the world. So thanks for coming out. Thanks to that channel for sponsoring us. And let's get down to some of the nitty-gritty. There's a large scandal brewing in England. We're going to do that later in the show. We talked to you about last week about how we had a CEO from major international shipping company coming here to us to ask us about stolen Patriot missiles being seconded around the world in the grand flux of the greater game of world global domination. So as I was reviewing my show notes for tonight and going over David Icke's article on pedophilia, I was quite surprised to become aware of the fact that, you know, we started a ball rolling. Today's Google Doodle is the Children's Day. It's Children's Day today. Happy Children's Day, children. And well, I guess we're all still children in a way. But I look at this and I see, based on some of the work we're doing, that maybe this isn't just the innocuous Punch and Judy show. Maybe there's a little more deeper Twilight language in here with this Jimmy Savile, or Savile as he's termed in Britain, being the jester or the puppet of the jester. We have the sun and the moon gods in the sky, the innocent children in front of the house being lured away from perhaps their den of safety. Because the big story in Britain, of course, is BBC Newsnight program that outed a lot of senior politicos as pedophiles and sex fiends was roundly trumped and destroyed. They got sucker punched. They had a victim. The victim revealed great information, but he never revealed the name, as David Icke posted in his blog on pedophilia, which we'll get into in more detail. He never revealed the name, but the media, just like with Osama bin Laden, instantly they revealed the name and said it was this guy, a former Thatcherite MP. And right away I see the trick that they used. It's like Maxwell Smart was one of my favorite comedians and a favorite TV show, and revolutionary, really, because anytime something happened, Max was always quick to say, and that was the old such and such trick, and that's the so many times I've fallen for it this week, month, year, etc., etc. Well, this trick was used before, too. It was used on this man, Dan Rather. Dan Rather was with 60 Minutes, CBS News major flagship show, still a flagship show today. And Dan Rather revealed that there were documents available that showed that this man down here, President George Bush, with Father President George Bush, kind of didn't exactly fulfill his duties with the National Guard. And it didn't exactly get to go to Vietnam and be a war hero. In fact, he was kind of just shuffled off into the back and fell by the wayside and never got to go into combat. So the individual who gave information for this show was supposed to have been outed as a fraud. Although it was only one source of information, they said the information was prepared on a modern computer and not on a typewriter. Wow. Like, that just sounds like the Obama story, except we accept what was written on the computer, even though it should have been on a typewriter. His birth certificate, and the fact that he can get to be president of the United States without having shown the original birth certificate. So they destroyed Dan Rather, who now has to take up a show on a smaller network. His lawsuit was stymied. We'll get into a little bit about that, how the secret societies just destroy you when you're famous like that, when you don't fulfill your obligations, or you rat them out. So the court threw out his lawsuit, even though, you know, it was more than justified. This tome here, Truth and Duty, clearly revealed a lot of the evidence. There were many sources of evidence. I have another book at home. I got to look up the title so I can add that to the posting here. And it has copies of all these documents inside. That's why I bought it. Saw it at a clearance store and just go, hey, karma. This is exactly what I need. All the evidence, all in one book, to show that the President of the United States shirked his duty in the Air National Guard, didn't go to Vietnam, was probably drunk most of the time, and basically is a complete and total fraud, like they always are. So the real heroes are, as we show down here, we have a link to our website, and we can show the letter page that we did. We wrote this chap here, Mr. Watson, Member of Parliament in England, and he's taking on a certain guy, David Cameron, the Prime Minister, and he's outing him as a person more deeply involved in these scandals. And I'd have to say, this man is a hero, because they threatened him. They said, if you dig too deep, you're gone. And he says, I don't care. I'm still going to take this on. Because we revealed that this Chipping Norton set of the Prime Minister and his friends, two of which just got charged by the police for bribing police and such like that. This Mr. Coulson, who worked for Murdoch Incorporated in the Prime Minister's office. And that, what's that other chick's name? Rebecca Brooks? She's charged too. So I think that's just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The wheels of justice are slowly starting to circle in and get them. But we revealed that the circle of friends not only were deleting information from a murdered girl's cell phone through this News of the World scandal, this Millie Dowler, but that through the circle of friends, one of the Prime Minister's friends was married to a chap named Freud, descendant of Sigmund Freud. Then another relative actually had a home, cottage, villa, whatever you want to call it, in the exact village where Madelaine McCann went missing. And that this Freud actually worked in the family home as a cook after the murder, and may very well have been instrumental in concealing evidence or participating in a crime. That's more than enough juice to get something started. Wiretaps, investigations, etc., etc., etc. Something I've wanted to bring up on the show for some period of time, just haven't had the opportunity because we always run out of time, which is a shame, because having degenerate leaders who, with a circle of friends, have people involved in a circle of friends, that one of your friends deletes messages from a dead girl's cell phone, bribes public officials, you hire one of these turkeys to work in your office as the Prime Minister, and another one of these circle of friends has a relative that owns a home in a small Portuguese village, Praia da Luz, where this little girl went missing and has never been found. Probably the most wanted missing person on the planet Earth. Although now they sweep it under the rug a little bit. Nobody talks about her anymore because it's a hot potato. Mr. Prime Minister, did you know that your friends are in a circle of friends that may be encircling little children and taking them away for murder? And that you cover it up and sweep it under the rug, perhaps? And you refuse to let decent cops investigate some of this stuff? So as I see from one of my articles that I have here on Madelaine, that this home that her parents rented was owned by a chap who had a secret chamber under his home. So this guy, Robert Murat, was outed in the Daily Mail, and then he went after the Daily Mail and say, well, you can't tell anybody about that. But his architect in 1993, who built what's called Casa Liliana, told the police of its existence. DNA samples were found in the house. You know, in most jurisdictions, that would be like open and shut. So what happens is, a businessman from South Africa is getting himself in a little bit of, not necessarily trouble, but getting himself in the news, where he got like some of this sonar or radar that they scanned the ground with, and he went to the property when nobody was around. Ground penetrating radar is what it's called, you see? And he started examining the driveway, and he found the earth was moved underneath. So he went to the police in Portugal and England. And they said, oh, no, that's okay. We know all about it. We checked it way back when in the day. But they didn't, because he has pictures of the site before and after. And they were never changed. It was a whole pile of junk piled up. Nothing ever moved. Nobody ever really checked that property. And many of the experts that this businessman has hired in ground penetrating radar say the earth was disturbed. And the manner in which it was disturbed, I think it was 3 out of 4 of them, or 2 out of 3 of them say, is the manner it would be disturbed as if you put a body under the driveway. Mr. Cameron, I'm not an MP, so I can't ask those questions, but did you know that your circle of friends is a really weird and whacked out circle of friends? Is that the reason why they like cover up all these scandals about the pedophiles and the molesters and such like that? I'd have to say it's probably a good deal. So happy Children's Day, children, because there's some people who are just not going to let the ball drop, and we're going to not let devious bastards, whether they're in the police, the news media, the elite rich, the politicos, or whatever, get away with murder. At least not on Children's Day. And in fact, we're not going to let them get away with murder on many other days as well. Because here's one murder. The other big story, of course, is we're heading towards war. And this young man here is a reporter with the BBC. And he's holding his dead baby, Omar, 11 months old, in his hands, who was killed in one of these Israeli bombing attacks. And he asks, why did my son die? Why did my son die? Why are a lot of other babies dying in there? So he's taking the child, badly burned, torn apart probably to some degree by shrapnel, to the funeral. Well, we know why. Maybe he knows why too. Maybe he doesn't know the deep spiritual meaning of why he should have to suffer like that. Because it is a terrible thing. Whole families have been wiped out on both sides. We're not picking sides. We're just saying this is bloody well evil. Children like this should not have to know suffering like that. Ever. Doesn't matter what side they're on. That's the result of war. Some people like to say, oh, how they like war. It's like it's some kind of sports games. I mean, it's not sports. This is real life. Like, things just blow to smithereens. It's like a really small earthquake right on top of you, where everything just fractures and comes apart, and projectiles move faster than rifle bullets as little bits of pieces of everything fly all over. You know, you got your missiles taking off, and those are Israelis there firing their Iron Dome missiles to shoot down missiles. You get lots of funerals. There's crying and torment all over. That's the joy of war that they just don't seem to tell us about sometimes, at least not the warmongers. The warmongers always seem to be just interested in war. So the guns don't really help you out. It just makes things worse and worse and worse and worse. There's a car buried here. A lot of dirt can be moved by high explosives. These bombers can drop a crap load of stuff on your head. This is the cost of war. War is usually paid for by, you know, the most innocent and the most vulnerable, because they can't get out of the way and they don't have the resources of the nation state to hide behind. So it's just an absolutely devastating period. Israel wants war for many strategic reasons, which we'll get into and explain the why. That's some tear gas and there's basic rioting. This is another place, you know, just blown to smithereens by an incoming missile. I believe this one was in Israel. So it really doesn't matter, you know, so much where you are or whatever. It's just horrible. And then these guys are the cleanup crew that come in and clean up the blood stains and all that sort of stuff. So nothing's ever the same after war starts. Everything's torn asunder, ripped apart. People have to go without food and water. You have to live in fear, cower. And this is where we get down to the start of the nitty-gritty. Just reduced that in size one little notch. But a Hamas leader, Ahmad Jabari, was driving in that car, and he was targeted by Israel. And of course, with all our modern weapons, we can have nice close-up pictures of everything being blown to smithereens. And of course, his car was blown to smithereens with him in it. So goodbye, Ahmed. So Israel would say, oh yes, we're getting rid of this terrorist guy. He's a Hamas leader. He fires missiles into our country. We took him out. And then, for whatever miracle of reasons, I found out, because this just doesn't get out into to, you know, a lot of mainstream media, or maybe any media, but it's called the IB Times out of the UK, and they published a piece which they used Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, as a source material. So I'm quite confident that this is the real Megillah here. But an Israeli peace activist, Gershon Baskan, told Haaretz that he played a crucial role in the negotiations for peace. See, there were negotiations for peace before this happened. That they released an abducted Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit. They're working on some success with a peace agreement with Hamas, Egypt, and Israeli representatives. Of course, Jabari's assassination prevented the possibility of real peace or a truce or anything like that. So what they were doing is they were getting into negotiations. They said Jabari was not a righteous man of peace exactly. He's not an angel, but they were working on something. And they had a truce agreement draft. It was submitted to the Israeli defense minister, Ehud Barak. And then Israel decided that they weren't going to work on this, and they killed Jabari. So what we see here is just a classic baiting to start a war. They do this stuff all the time. So they come up to you and they talk peace and say, you know, peace, love, harmony, and all this kind of stuff. Here's the draft, you know, and this guy's looking it over thinking, hey, you know, peace in our time. I don't want it, but it's probably the best thing for all our peoples. And while you're considering this, they blow the living crap out of you from the sky and kill you. What are his followers going to do? They're going to go absolutely apeshit, start firing back. Because that's exactly probably what Israel wanted in the first place. So what they do is they lure you into some kind of trap to make you react. And then all of a sudden they just point and say, see, look, I told you they're killers. They leave out the fact that they were trying to make a peace deal with you. Very, very interesting, this world global domination, the strategy of these tyrants and bastards. Let's see here. Get into my next one. I got a whole different setup here, so I got to get used to using all this stuff. So there's reasons for this. We see some other, big classic explosions here. A lot of reasons. One of the big reasons is, of course, Israel has designs to go into Iran. They don't need a thorn in the back from the Gaza with Hamas. So by taking out Hamas in advance, they free themselves for later. It's classic military strategy. You don't want to fight a war on two fronts. So by getting Hamas to attack you, you put yourself in the defensive state. See, they're all there defensive, right? You're calling up 75,000 reserves, blow up a few little kids and where they live, no problem. But it's part of a grander military strategy. The other thing is you lure Hamas in their anger to fire off a lot of their inventory of missiles. So you can take them out before your big game starts. You just do it with a little game. Just brilliant strategy. And then, of course, this is the other brilliant strategy. You shoot the press. Press TV, the Iranian TV service, right? Blow them up. Been quite a few reporters killed, and this is the big shot here, is they've attacked the press building twice. 2 different days, 2 different attacks. And what this is doing is it's building up Netanyahu for the election, because everybody's cowering in fear, and they got to look to Netanyahu. Please, please, save us, Benjamin, save us, because they have no idea maybe that they were working out this peace plan, and they started it all going in the first place. So they're actually going probably to the guy who started it and asking him to make peace. Well, how's he going to make peace? With war. And he's achieving all his military objectives. They say in this article from the Daily Mail, Israel unleashed intensive airstrikes on Wednesday, killing the commander of the Hamas Islamist group that governs Gaza and spurns peace with the Jewish state. Well, there's a lie, too, because it just said they were trying to make a peace deal. So they weren't spurning him. He was spurning him because they blew him up. He couldn't do anything after that. So Israel's declared goal is to deplete Gaza arsenals and press Hamas into stopping cross-border rocket fire. See, there's the big word, deplete. They wanted to use up their inventory of missiles. See, that forces Iran, who denies supplying missiles, to resupply them, and then they expose their supply lines. So Israel gets a double whammo there. They see where the missiles are coming from, blow up the sites, they see where they're resupplied from, can take out the supply lines, and of course take out the media, so nobody sees anything. It's just absolutely brilliant. But then, Israel's been in the war game for a long time. And it's not a game, it's real life. Sometimes I always wish, I had the skills of a surgeon or something like that to put the wounded back together. But I guess my skill is to be, in this version of the news media, to reveal the truth, try to expose it. Israeli or Palestinian boys throwing rocks at the Israelis. That's what you live in. It's just a total prison camp. And this is the enemy. Right? Little girl in Nazareth with a candle. I guess to a lot of people that's the enemy too. But I'd have to say, no, that's not the enemy. We've seen the enemy. We look in the mirror sometimes. That's the enemy. The enemy is us. And as we did for the blog to get this started, I guess, let me see here. We had a U of T professor who lost his daughters. And there they are there. They were killed in the last Israeli invasion 3 beautiful young girls, age 15, 13, and 20. He lost all 3 of his girls. Saw him in the Toronto Star when I was getting my hair cut. And he wrote a book called I Shall Not Hate. So even though he lost his daughters and his niece, and you get suckered into you know, that type of stuff where you just hate going a killing jihad or something like that. I don't know, I can get his picture up fast enough. We got so much internet going down here, but there he is there, speaking in the Muskokas. And he says, I won't hate. You killed my family, you killed my daughters. He's a doctor too. He's a guy who can put the bodies back together and such like that. But he won't hate. So no matter what they do to you, see, that's the trick. That's how they lure you into these traps. Is, you know, they do something to you to get you mad, and then you hate, and then you start killing, and then they say, see, look at them. They're evil. But nobody tells them that, you know, they killed your kids first. The spin doctors get at this stuff and make a mess of it. So the only answer, of course, is like a Christian answer. The answer of Jesus was to forgive your enemies and not hate. Love your enemies even. Because then there's nothing they can do to you anymore. They can't manipulate you or trick you or anything like that. So this poor man had to suffer terribly because of that. And we'll see if I can get my stuff up the way I want it here. Let me see that one there. So another picture came up here that I want to make light of, and that's this puppy down here somewhere. Hopefully the newspaper didn't change them all around. There we go, a couple of more down. So this is the baby here. This explosive device went off in the Gaza, and then of course they don't know pretty much jack shit about anything, but they say this is molten hot shrapnel. No, that's not shrapnel. That's phosphorus. Okay, that's a burning metal. That's, you know, the ultimate little flamethrowers, white phosphorus. You put that in explosive shells, man, and the burning metals just cut through anything. And you can't put the fire out because it's burning metal. It has to, you know, it'll burn underwater. You're made up of water, so you get shrapnel from that in your wounds. Like, you don't get it out. They got to operate under, like, they got to put you in some kind of, like, almost like an oil gel or something like that, and operate on you, because that's the only thing the stuff won't burn in, and get the white phosphorus out. So it's a horrendous weapon. But then I guess all weapons are horrendous, aren't they? Especially if you're on the receiving end. People talk about the apocalyptic sky. I know a friend, retired teacher, was telling me about the Bible code, just reminding me to remember Ramallah is in the Bible code. That's part of the Gaza. That's part of the stuff that's been talked about in the past to get it all started. This is what they want to do. They want to get it all started. And the big thing is we can't let them. The most powerful weapon we have to stop them is, no matter what they do, we can't hate. Because hate just makes, you know, right? An eye for an eye makes us both blind is the old adage. It's always worked. It still works. So we can't respond with hate. Difficult to go huggy kissy. They got the little heart there on the wall. But this is what happens. You know, when you get hit with high explosives. This is just like non-conventional or conventional weapons. Like, ever imagine what's going to happen to you? They hit you with nukes, and like every building in 20 square miles looks like this, with the radioactive fallout to boot. So that's why sometimes, you know, I talk to you about stuff, having things handy, like steel-toed shoes and boots, preferably boots. You're walking through all this rubble, like on any construction site, you got to have that stuff. And you look at them bricks. You know, there's a lot of loose ones probably above these kids' heads that could come down at any time. You know, you can buy a construction helmet at Walmart for like $3, $5, something like that. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's a whole lot better than taking it in the cranium, because in a lot of these destructive elements, it's your head that's most vulnerable. And you get whacked in the head, you're looking at a very serious injury. It could be life-threatening, especially with limited medical supplies. So to have heavy clothing that doesn't burn, you get almost anything that's made in China, you're a flaming Zambuki. You're going to go up like there's no tomorrow. And you're going to be in the funeral procession. So to have clothes that don't burn, to have heavy duty, like military surplus style clothes that are strong, don't tear easily, give you some protection from, you know, maybe some sharp objects like glass, protect you a little bit more from the just unbelievable amounts of flame and such like that, are very important. Steel-toed boots, at the very least a construction helmet, some heavy-duty gloves, and then even just your simple dust mask that you find in any dollar store or building store that they use for, you know, like when you're cutting wood or something like that. So you don't have to breathe in all the garbage and carcinogens that are in the air. Very important. This was a British football star. He was in Israel playing a game. Didn't have a clue what was going on, eh? You know, sirens are going off. All the guys in his team are running for the dugout to take cover, and he's just standing there. Hey, what's going on? I'm a sports star. So, same with a few of the other sports stars that come from other countries. And not a clue, man. Like, you're in flipping Israel, man. You know, like, it's been like non-stop conflict there for some time. So then, the guys, everybody does compulsory military service. Explain to them, like, head to the dugout, pal. We're at war. Now, war? I didn't have a clue, man. I just play sports. Well, there's the ultimate sport there, world global domination. So he didn't have his dust mask from the dollar store. He made his own, improvised to keep all those burning materials out of your lungs. And the classic old slingshot. David could slay Goliath with that one. We'll see what he can do, and others like him. And then, of course, the other guys on the other side have a few toys like that. It's not going to be pretty. And of course, everybody says they have God on their side, but nobody does what God tells you to do. Thou shalt not moida. Some of the boys resting up for the battle. That's another thing that don't do you any harm right there, is knee pads. In case you just got to drop quickly as some ordnance comes in. You know, you got to land on broken glass and cement and concrete and stuff like that. Some good garden knee pads will go a long way to help you out. And it don't hurt to have a second or third vehicle stashed away somewhere, as you're going to need it. The other big thing is you need those good boots to hike your ass out of there, because by and large you're probably not going to go too far. And then of course they got this nice wall between the Gaza and Israel to keep all the riffraff out. And that's what you're dealing with, with a building collapse. 11 members of a family were killed, I believe specifically at this one, completely wiped out in one of these explosions. So I guess if you gotta go, you might as well all go together and nobody suffers behind. This is some of the ranges of the rockets that they can fire from Gaza now that they have the new big Iranian Fajr 5, 75-kilometer range, 175-pound warhead. They can take out a good part of Israel. And that's why it's just so stupid to fight. Nobody wins anything in a war, just one side loses more than the other. So you just got to shake your head, listen to it rattle, and go on like, why are we doing this? Well, the big thing is, it's for the elite rich, so they can profit and take advantage of the situation. One of the other little counter coups is Anonymous has attacked Israeli websites, all kinds of things, government, companies, such like that, hacked them, released information on them, turned them upside down. 6 ways from Sunday, they released a statement. Greetings, world. For far too long, Anonymous has stood by with the rest of the world and watched in despair the barbaric, brutal, and despicable treatment of the Palestinian people in the so-called occupied territories by the Israeli Defense Force. Like so many people around the globe, we have felt helpless in the face of such implacable evil. And today's insane attack and threatened invasion of Gaza was more of the same. Israel threatened to sever all internet and other telecommunications info out of the Gaza and crossed a line in the sand. We are Anonymous, and no one shuts down the internet on our watch. Do the people of Gaza and the occupied territories know that Anonymous stands with you in this fight? We will do everything in our power to hinder the evil forces of the IDF arrayed against you. Anonymous has set up a care package, and it probably couldn't hurt for almost anybody to know about this in case you're up the creek. I guess just Google Anonymous Care Package and you can get to the the website, which is kind of weird and stuff like that, but it contains instructions in Arabic and English to aid you in the event the government shuts down the internet. Things that you can do and survive and thrive in cyberspace. Good. We need that. See, we, the people, have to do something because it's incumbent upon us. A lot of people tell me all the time, say, I'm just one person, I can't do anything. Well, I'm only one person. Everybody's only one person. So we can do something. The only reason you can't do anything as one person is because you don't do anything. So if you don't do anything, you can't achieve anything because you didn't do anything. You gotta, like, kind of like get up off your ass and do something. Even if you can't do anything directly or something like that because you're too busy shitting and shivering somewhere, like, you can always send an anonymous donation to our show and we'll do it for you. We won't let them get away with MIDA. So some of the other news stories that follow in this is Obama is starting talks or aiming to start talks with Iran next month. Though that's swept under the rug by mainstream media to a great extent, even though it was hinted at in the New York Times. It's like one of those stories, it's one of those missiles that takes off and it right into the ground and nobody talks about it anymore after that. They find some other, Kim Kardashian story and talk about the movable mountains or something like that, but that's about it. Well, this is kind of important. I could actually respect Obama for doing that. This came from File, which is, an Israeli type source. I would say it's probably pretty close to good there, because it's, fighting it out don't get you anywhere. The thing to do is talk it out. So they say Iran is refining. They got more centrifuges going on, according to this BBC article. Iran ready to double uranium enrichment. But see, what they sort of hint at it there is that, the world cut them off with sanctions from having radioactive isotopes for medical purposes. So they got to make their own, and those have to be refined a little more than, what you do to burn for fuel or something like that. So that almost makes it look like you're making a nuclear weapon, and then somebody can stand back. See, they're making a nuclear weapon because they're refining the uranium. But really, you're making medical isotopes because the world cut you off for that. But nobody tells you the world cut you off. The world just says, you're a crazy terrorist. We have to kill you. And then you get more war. You're going to blow more people up, kill more babies. That's what the New World Order likes. Israeli leaders re-examine Gaza ground. You see, they'd be in there already, kicking ass, running people over with tanks and stuff like that. But there's, another little news article that come out and says, and this is from File too, says Obama put pressure on him and said, no, we don't want this. We don't want you to go in there yet. And perhaps for some reason, probably because they get a lot of donations from the American taxpayer, they just said, your funding pretty much revolves around the fact that, put the brakes on the tanks, pal. They did the same thing to Egypt, although they said about that, we'll cut off all your aid if you don't do what we tell you to do. And maybe they said the same thing to Netanyahu, and he's just going like, ooh, 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 my billions, don't cut off my billions. So maybe there's another good thing Obama's out there to do. Maybe might even earn a Nobel Peace Prize this time around. But as we get into the Ambassador Stevens story, we'd have to expect maybe that he'll get his Nobel Peace Prize in prison. Bilderberg Group quietly meets in Italy. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's a secret. See, they're planning things like a financial collapse, a World War III, the things that make Bilderberg guys, get a woody at night when they're sleeping. With all those lights going on about molesting children and stuff like that, they can't do that as much as they used to. There's really no such thing as the Bilderberg Group anyway, right? It's just a conspiracy theory. All these secret guys getting together to rule the world. Well, they had an impromptu meeting in Italy under the guise of the Rome Film Festival. So, it was only semi-secret because they're moogling around with all the moguls. The author of the article talks about a engineered crisis. Almost all crises are engineered by these turkeys. We just react to circumstances. They know we'll react to circumstances, so it's like you sit in a chair with a big needle in it. You're gonna jump. So my thing is find out who put the needle in the chair and punch him in the nose. Get it over with. So We heard Japan passed the fiscal cliff. That was kind of kept rather quiet. Maybe they talked about it in Italy. But they averted their fiscal cliff. They approved a crucial bill that will allow them to not run out of money at the end of the month. They'll be able to borrow additional money by selling bonds to pay for a large chunk of the expenses. Where do they get this borrowing from? Sorry, money's created out of thin air. There's lots of thin air in the room, and I didn't buy a lotto ticket that won, you know, so I can get some of this thin air here, and maybe I can bring it down and have some money too. Create my own. Wouldn't that be nice? But industrial production is still falling. Exports remain weak. The Japanese economy shrunk a little bit, 0.9%, which isn't a whole lot, really. Like, we could probably survive a really good shrinking, 10, 15% even, like us guys on the bottom. Where it hurts is the trillionaires and super multi-billionaires. When the economy shrinks that little bit, that just wipes out a lot of their investments because they shrink exponentially and just ruin these people, and that's why it's not a good thing. Spain is in a little trouble with their banking. A lot of evictions, people getting thrown out of their homes en masse here with their problem loans. Have hit an all-time high as far as the latest records, which are September. Collapse of the country's property bubble continued to hurt the economy. These debts and bad loans reach 182 billion euros, 10.7% of bank assets. So they suspended evictions of the most vulnerable people. You know, there you go, eh? Like, if the home's going to be empty anyway, and you can't sell it because nobody wants to buy it because the prices collapse, and the worst, it's going to collapse more or something, like, what harm does it do to let the people live there for free just because you're like a decent human being? And maybe you'll be blessed by the karma wave that, you know, just might come back and help you out or something like that, you see. But it's not in a corporatist mindset or a banker's mindset to actually do something to help somebody. Everything's got to, it's like they're cab drivers, and the only thing they understand is clicking that little handle to make the meter work. So these questionable loans are going to end up in a new bank called the bad bank, and the bad bank will take all these loans. Of course, that's a government bank, so it's on the hook of the taxpayer, which still includes all the people that got tossed out of their houses. The European Union is going to come in with a 100 billion euro rescue package, but to draw on the law on this loan, I guess the Spanish government would have to sell their souls and your souls. So maybe that's not the best deal in the world. But one thing they are doing is, if you're willing to buy some Spanish real estate, you can get Spanish residency. You can get an instant passport. You just got to buy a place for 160,000 euros or more. But I guess you got to do it fast before the price collapses a little bit. Then the FDIC here in the States at the end of the year is, they used to have your insurance plan cover most of the deposits. Well, they're putting the limit on that. In Canada, we've always had a limit on that, but a $250,000 limit, which is more than we got, I think, by far, is ramped back. So a lot of people are going to be moving money quickly out of accounts that are no longer insured and put it into short-term Treasury securities. So the Treasury, in order to handle this influx of cash, is thinking about offering a negative interest rate of 0.5%. So that way you got to pay them money to keep your money. Well, if you're really stuck, I'm sure we could work something out here at that channel. Well, you could park your money here. We'll keep it for you, you know, for 0%. Then you don't lose 0.5%. That's probably better. And, you know, if we can get anything off the interest or something, we can run the station or something, you know, for turn it into like a big skyscraper or something if we get enough trillions. So this 0.5% negative interest rate was offered by the Swiss and the Germans. They're always good in a crisis, because the Spanish, the Greeks, and the Italians were flooding their banks with moolah. Barclays is supposed to hand over names of staff implicated in the LIBOR scandal. Good. The Eurozone falls into double-dip recession. We got all kinds of protests, anti-austerity protests. Let's see if I can find some pictures for that here. Eurozone, there we are. So there's the party as people take to the streets there. See, they cover up that in a lot of mainstream media too. So, you know, nobody's pissed off there. That's a big picture, right? You know, signs and banners and stuff like that. Like in Toronto, like, you know, they probably just have the same picture, say it's the Gay Pride Parade or something like that. But no, those are disenfranchised voters and stuff like that. The usual losers who work on the global economy. A little bit at the Brandenburg Gates there, a little impromptu. You know, there's a few guys get a little pissed. That's not going to achieve anything, really. But most of them have absolutely no idea what's going on or why it happened. See, everything was okay, everything was cool, and then all of a sudden something changed, and we ended up in a financial crisis. We don't know what's going on, so just like spoiled children, we run into the street and get all upset, and the cops got to drag us away, kicking and screaming and all that kind of stuff, because, you know, we were watching reality TV. Right? Nobody did this on reality TV. We just sat around in a room and looked at each other's shorts and said, you know, does he like me or does he not? See? This is reality TV right here, baby. This is reality. So you get lured into paying for cable and watching all kinds of crap or something like that, you know, and this is the real reality that comes out. All of a sudden, governments have to cut spending. You don't have health care. You lose pensions. You know, like there's a big influx now of Canadians here that are working. You know, I know a guy's he's in his, you know, mid to late 70s, had to take up a job to start to, you know, pile a few things out. Because with that 0.5% negative interest rate, or the rest of the interest rates like zero, I know I got something coming due soon, and, you know, it was one of those things where it's not a mutual fund. I won't use those, but they have some kind of investment certificate that's based on the markets, and it comes due. So the principal's guaranteed, so you can't lose any money. But I'm betting dollars to donuts. I haven't even made a thin dime. 5-year investment, you know. So I have to cash that puppy in, and maybe I'll have to do, I'm suggesting a bank run or anything like that, but I wouldn't leave a plug nickel in that sucker. Right? Because if you got to pay to park it, you can park it at home for free or something like that, or get a safety deposit box, buy stuff that you're going to need, food, stuff like that. Maybe some kidney pads for when you're duking it out with the cops. Or do what China and Russia are doing. They're acquiring gold and they're dumping US dollars, but don't tell anybody, it's a secret. You want the US economy to be thought of as invulnerable, invincible, but these suckers are buying tons of gold. China and Russia acquiring gold, dumping US dollars, according to this article. China has risen now to the largest gold-producing nation in the world at around 270 tons. It's metric tons, I guess, because you got the two N's and an ES. The amount brought in by the government initially looks like 90 tons per annum, or just under 2 tons a week. Boy, I guess I need a bigger basement to put that away. So the Dubai Financial Central Authority, Dubai International Financial Center Authority economists release a report calling for local countries to build up their gold reserves, because they don't have a lot of gold reserves. Just throws you away. You think a lot of these Middle Eastern countries do. Well, they're telling the GCC states to maintain less than 5% of their total reserves in gold. The ECB holds 25% of its reserves in gold. Now there's a smart Euro guy. Trouble is, most of them are probably like still in tooth form, stuff they got from the Nazis in the war. You know, they got those little things that goes. I got my golden Jewish teeth still. Because all those big Swiss banks did that. They laundered the money for the Germans. They took the stuff. Some security guard at one of the big banks, I think it was UBS, he reported it. You know, he had to flee the country, get away from the lynch mobs. They were telling the truth. International Monetary Fund and the European Central Bank are the major gold sellers. So the IMF's gold reserves decreased by 158.6 tons. So I might have to say you're stupid. And then a lot of people get into this paper gold stuff or other investments. But the advantage of paper gold and investments like that is when the crunch really comes and you can't get any Delcy or White Swan or anything like that, you know, you can use the paper gold certificates. Might be a little crunchy, but it'll clean your rear end. There are Google friends. I've invented a new game. Very weird. This comes from one of our faithful followers in Florida. INGRESS, Google's strange new game. John Hankey is head of the Niantic Labs. INGRESS, a new global alternative reality game. See, reality is all over the place. It's like it's in the street, it's in the Gaza, it's in New England, all over the place where the hurricane went through, wiped everybody out. There's reality, baby. Anyway, this guy worked for Foreign Affairs for the U.S. government in Washington, D.C. and Southeast Asia. They go, wink, 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 nod, nod, know what I mean, know what I mean. He's the CEO of Keyhole Incorporated that specialized in geospatial data visualizations, connections to the black world. Keyhole Incorporated received financial backing from the CIA. And In-Q-Tel, I think In-Q-Tel was the company that was hacking my computer once from California or something. Google acquired Keyhole Incorporated. They became Google Earth, Google Maps, Google Services. They were helpful in something they call secrets in plain sight, which is almost like that 9/11 in plain sight documentary. So this game, Ingress, people who are physically present at the locations in the game confront a mysterious energy where they must choose a side. So as we're getting, to this so-called Mayan calendar day and some of the weird and funky things that are going to happen in the world, where we're supposed to be entering a new quantum dynamic in the universe, we may be bombarded with this new type of energy. So the enlightened will seek to embrace the power that this energy may bestow upon us. The resistance struggle to defend and protect what's left of our humanity. Ingress calls this soft control. We can soft control users with gaming or social network incentives to drive them where we want them, which is something the New World Order has always done with us, is they drive us like slaves without even telling us we're slaves or that we're being driven. They do that with spin doctors in the news, the popular TV shows, sports, entertainment, food and drink, drugs, weird and bizarre sex, 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. They do it all the time, and we fall for it all the time. So the world around you is not what it seems. Our future is at stake, and you must choose a side. The mysterious energy has been unearthed by a team of scientists in Europe, and they start mentioning things about the CERN lab and such like that. So a very interesting little spin on that. Since November the 1st, Google Investigation Board has been bringing up this theme of this energy force in this game. And of course you do have to choose. Well, they don't tell you got to choose from, they leave that out. You got to choose between the world of Christ and the world of Antichrist. Because as we move forward into this New World Order, everything is more like Antichrist, not Christ. And you have to choose. What side are you on? And if you choose wrong, well, it isn't going to be all that pleasant for you at all. Google does something else as well. They don't tell you about this. It should be on the front page news. So this little site here, EFF.org archives, because it goes back to 2006. Google today announced a new feature of its Google desktop software that greatly increases the risk to consumer privacy. If a consumer chooses to use it, the new Search Across Computers feature will store copies of the user's Word documents, PDF spreadsheets, and other text-based documents on Google's own services. So basically, in a nutshell, what they're going to do is copy your hard drive and keep a copy. So they say it was a voluntary thing. But I get the strangest feeling that they just did it anyway. And they copied everybody's hard drive. So then another thing that comes out in the news here is this here, the Orient Express. This Chinese city has built this 10 million pound, 500-foot loop of steel that they say does absolutely nothing. So if anybody watches sci-fi movies like things about a Stargate, you'd have to say, that almost looks like it's a Stargate or something like that. Isn't that really wild? So it's supposed to simply just be a viewing platform, has elevators to take visitors up to the top. They were going to have a bungee jump option, but they thought it was too high or something like that, you get stuck in the O or something. It probably wouldn't be too good, but you know, that's a wild thing. Got LED lights all around it. Nice chemtrail. Look at that. They're doing it to these guys too. You losers. There you go. We got you. But that's our baby, a Stargate. Is that something really cool? Let's see here. I think I have a NASA video here. I was looking for some other material and I came across this. Had absolutely no understanding of what NASA was doing in this field. Let me find it here. Yes, the space-time vortex. Let's play that puppy.
A space-time vortex around Earth, presented by Science at NASA. Would you believe Earth sits in the middle of a space-time vortex? Einstein predicted this almost 100 years ago, and it turns out to be true. On May 4th, 2011, researchers announced that NASA's Gravity Probe B spacecraft has detected the vortex, and its shape precisely matches the predictions of Einstein's theory of gravity. The space-time around Earth appears to be distorted, just as general relativity predicts, says Stanford University physicist Francis Everett, principal investigator of the Gravity Probe B mission. Time and space, according to Einstein's theories of relativity, are woven together, forming a four-dimensional fabric called space-time. The mass of Earth dimples this fabric, much like a person sitting in the middle of a trampoline. If Earth were stationary, that would be the end of the story. But our planet spins, and the spin should pull the dimple around in a four-dimensional swirl. This is what Gravity Probe B went into space in 2004 to check. The idea behind the experiment is simple. Imagine trying to spin a toy top on the dimpled surface of that trampoline. It's going to wobble, right? Something similar happens when you try to spin a gyroscope in curved space-time. Its spin axis will drift or precess. Gravity Probe B carried some super-spherical gyros into Earth's orbit to see what they would do. In practice, this simple idea is extremely difficult. According to calculations, the twisted space-time around Earth should cause the axis of the gyros to drift by a tiny amount. Really tiny. It's like measuring the thickness of a sheet of paper, held edge-on 100 miles away. Even the slightest disturbance could ruin the experiment. We had to invent whole new technologies to make this possible, says Everett. The Gravity Probe B team developed a drag-free satellite that could brush against Earth's atmosphere without disturbing the gyros. They figured out how to keep Earth's magnetic field from penetrating the spacecraft. And they created a device to measure the spin of a gyro without touching the gyro. Pulling off the experiment was a big challenge. But after a year of data taking and nearly 5 years of analysis, the Gravity Probe B scientists appear to have done it. The gyros precessed. The vortex is real, and we are in it. Einstein was right again. For more information about the space-time vortex and what it means to us on Earth, please visit science.nasa.gov.
A UFO sighting in Denver, Colorado. So the local media, a Fox affiliate, KDVR, wanted to debunk this amateur footage that people are getting of spaceships zipping around every couple of few days around lunchtime. You know, I guess they're going to Taco Bell or something like that, pick up some takeout food. You know, you twice around Alpha Centauri. Hey, let's go to Earth, man. Let's get some food. So they set up their own camera to take pictures of nothing. And then what do? They capture pictures of the UFO too, which are a little better because they got higher resolution cameras and all this sort of thing. There's a picture of the puppy there that they set up. So they got pictures. And there we go. These little dots are zipping around, flying faster than fighter planes. I've seen one over Toronto, took a picture of it years ago. We just bought a digital camera, took a picture of the skyline, saw what I thought was like something like a dust particle on my lens or whatever, and then I blew it up and go, hey man, that's like a disk with a heat signature around it. That's in the picture. So here's the expert they bring in from he's a former pilot, flight instructor, FAA guy, and you know, he says, I don't know what it is. Well, I think we know what it is. It's a UFO. I don't know if it's from Alpha Centauri or anything like that, but you know, it's definitely something from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe for sure. Then let's see here. I guess we can go to one of my favorite mantras. Here is, you know, how gun control works. I always like that one. This is a big scandal that happened in Nigeria here, where the Nigerian military are going around and they just round people up and blow them away. There's the guy they blew away before. It's supposed to be a pile of dead bodies down the road. This guy's begging for his life, and they pop him. This grainy video was released to the media, you know, got to Reuters and things like that. Then, of course, the Nigerian army says, we don't kill people. You got the wrong people. I've never seen the video, but we don't kill people. I can swear all my soldiers are good Christians. They just don't go around killing people, even though we have the photographic evidence. But they just don't accept what's perfectly blatantly obvious, that they kill people. But see, this is something you're always programmed with. They program your brain like it's a computer, right? Remember, only the police and the military should have guns. And then the Wicked Witch should be coming out of the corner going, "So better to kill you with, my dear." Because that's what they do with them. Then we have another story of similar nature from Britain, where, you know, they nail this guy. You know, fiendish looking devil he is, isn't he? Sergeant Danny Nightingale, SAS veteran, 17 years in the military, 11 years. Look at all the medals he's got and all that kind of stuff. He did his job right, you know, a little bit younger, getting married to Sally, cutting the cake. It's amazing they didn't put him away for putting a knife in the cake, eh? Children, life, and all that kind of stuff. So while he was in Iraq, the Iraqi military gave him one of those. A Glockenspiel. 9mm Glockenspiel. He brought it home. And then after he got home, he suffered some kind of a brain injury and collapsed on a charity trek in Brazil. Now imagine if he's in the SAS, when you're talking a charity trek, that's like something that'd probably kill me 6 times over. So because he like passed out and his brain wasn't working too good, his buddies packed up his kit and sent it home, and inside was the gun. And he forgot all about it, that he got this thing, because, you know, after your brain stops functioning a little bit, like you don't even know what planet you're on. So then, lo and behold, you know, they find out. Well, I guess the other picture in his commando uniform didn't stick with this article. That's too bad. When they do find out, you know, of course, well, now he's a dangerous criminal. So the fact, you know, you are the military, the best the military has to offer, you fought for your country, you're a fine, decent individual, a married man, father, and stuff like that. Well, now you're a criminal because you got a gun in an anti-gun country where only the police and the military can have arms, and not even the police and the military can have arms because we can't trust anyone. They might do something right, like defend the life of an innocent person. See, in the past, even though Britain had a big military and they went all over the world, all the British soldiers bought their own guns. Saved the government money back then. You have less of a deficit, and I guess, you know, whatever. But in those days, like, they bought their own guns. You had like your Webleys and your Enfields and all kinds of stuff. And you carried them all over the world. I had a whole bunch in my collection that were historical artifacts that the government stole off me, but that's another story too, right? See, you know, it was a free country then. How many soldiers brought back war souvenirs from World War II, World War I? Their families inherit them because, you know, your Luger's got a 4-inch barrel, it becomes a prohibited weapon, and they all have to be confiscated and taken away. It's the same in Nigeria. I put a link to their gun laws and stuff. All that stuff, you know, you can't have anything over there either. So they disarm all the people, then they just line them up, shoot them in the head, and say, "We didn't do that. We would never shoot anybody like that." That's how gun control works. Doesn't do anything about like the criminal nut bar asylums or anything like that. They pretty much can have whatever they want, go whatever they want, do whatever they want, bribe whoever they want. It's just part of doing business, because everything else is they do is illegal anyway. So it really doesn't matter. There's like, you know, another 2 or 3 charges hanging on them. You know, so okay, they got their murder charge, they got this charge, a robbery, a this, a that, a smuggling, narcotics, 50 narcotics trafficking things, and 1 or 2 firearms charges. It doesn't mean nothing to them. The only people who could get stuck up in this are just innocent people who get stuck up in this. That guy doesn't deserve to be in jail. There's no way that there shouldn't be a proviso for these people to own something. He's not going to go rob a store. Might be able to stop people from robbing a store, but he ain't going to do that stuff. It's just ridiculous. Complete waste of time and effort. But it's all part of the New World Order strategy to completely disarm us before, you know, they send us to wherever they want to send us, which isn't going to be a nice place, I can assure you. And you got suckered because you allowed your brain to be programmed by these people. BP guilty of criminal misconduct in the spill. They're going to be fined, what was it there? 4.5 billion or something like that. But a phenomenal amount of money that they're going to pay. Yes, 4.5 billion. And lawsuits are still going on. So part of this, this paying this fine frees them up to fight the civil lawsuits that the people who are victims to this have filed. So the government will get their money, and who knows if any of the poor people who are affected by this are going to get any money. James Holmes accused in Colorado movie massacre, hospitalized. There's another one that got, you know, sweeps under the rug a little bit. Just found it by accident. You're looking at a newspaper, and then there's a little sidebar article. 1 minute, you're the talk of the world. It's Batman, it's nut bars, it's mind control, it's everything. And the next minute, you know, they're dragging you away in a straitjacket, throw you in a hospital somewhere, and nobody knows what the hell happened to you. So you might be a little bit late for some of his hearings if they don't take him out somewhere in between, which is highly likely. So it never pays to work for the New World Order. They don't have a pension plan. Actually, it's quite funny how history repeats and stuff like that, and the markets were going up, and I guess everybody's got a big woody for that. And, you know, I recommended this old book here, Crisis of the Old Order, Arthur M. Schlesinger, 3-part thing. You know, as you go through this, you just, you know, you're reading history, and it's like, you know, my buddy's looking at the newspaper, and I'm going, hey, that's in the newspaper today. This is 1927, 1928. Exactly the same stuff. Same rubber boots, same cow patties you're stepping in, exactly the same. So, sober businessmen began to regard the situation with discomfort. It's like the stock market. Occasionally, these doubts found public expression, causing faint tremors of anxiety. But whenever the market faltered, someone in the administration could be relied on to speak words of encouragement. And then the markets would go back up. And that's just what happened the last couple of days. We're heading for the fiscal cliff. And then somebody in the Obama administration says, oh, don't worry. We're going to fix the fiscal cliff. Everything's going to be fine. And the markets go back up again. Exactly like 1927, 1928. Until they get to 1929. I think we all know what happened there. So another part was this professor, William Z. Ripley, I guess it was Ripley's, believe it or not, Harvard economics professor. He goes to the White House and he talks to the president, Calvin Coolidge. Tells him, like, baby, we're going over the fiscal cliff. And the president, a very wise man, said, is there anything I can do about that? And Professor Ripley said, no. Because in those days, it wasn't a federal responsibility to do a lot of the things that were state responsibilities. So you see how they kind of sucker us into, like, expanding federal government powers by letting a crisis happen. So what does the president do when he finds out they can't do anything? Puts his feet up on the desk, lights up a big stogie, and smokes it. Clinton did the same thing, but he made sure he had a woman in the room. Coolidge was a Calvinist, I think, so that wasn't going to happen. Just smoked a cigar and blow smoke in your face. And we have our military intelligence of the military-industrial complex, of course, doing more. General David Patraeus, as he was called in Afghanistan, Betraeus, was called to testify. in a closed session of the House Intelligence Committee and its Senate counterpart. The Republicans are saying that the administration has misled the public. General Patraeus was aware the attack was planned by terrorists from an early stage. Evidence on Friday conflicted with that. Then he spoke at another hearing on the 14th of September. It appears he had a very different recollection then, that he said the attack grew out of a spontaneous protest of the anti-Islamic film. So we see that somebody's spinning this guy, and he's just making up the story of the week to suit whatever circumstances fit. That's like the flavor of the week. But what's most disturbing is he was aware from a very early stage that the terrorists were going to strike. Those are the key words there. Very early stage. So it's just like, I'm the chief of police and I know they're robbing the bank. I only got one bank in town. It's a small town. I know they're coming for it. I got very advanced warning they're coming to rob the bank. Then they rob the bank anyway and kill all the tellers. And I come in to testify to say, I knew they were going to do that from a very early stage. I think he'd be firing the chief of police, not because he was having an affair, because he's just butt-fuck stupid. If you knew they were coming to get this guy, you should have been doing something about it, because there were CIA agents doing something about it. They were calling in for help. And the American military was ordered to stand down. And they let those attacks happen, and they let those people get killed. And there was a reason for that. They wanted to kill them. Can be no other explanation. Because it sure wasn't the movie. That was a cover story, and we covered that in great detail. So he's adamant there was no politicalization of the process. No White House interference or political agenda. There was a Russian intelligence officer who wrote a book called New Lies for Old. I think that's what applies here. So he said he was there and he was familiar with the layout. He said the security was very lax and the attackers walked in and set fire to the facility. Well, maybe it was lax because he didn't have any security. The security they had belonged to that British security company on contract that were registered to a moor in a swamp in the back 40 of the British Isles, next to some sheep dip. No wonder you got lax security. But who made that contract? You didn't know? Well, he's too busy banging his girlfriend, I guess, but you didn't know? So they're coming gunning for the guy, and you must know it's like in a filing cabinet. You pull it out, or it's on a computer, and you don't use binders, but you open up the file and you go, yeah, we got this contract agent here that is registered in a swamp in England, and they're providing the security for the embassy, and we told all the staff to take the bullets out of their guns because we shouldn't have bullets to shoot people who are going to attack us. That tells me that was a setup job. Then Hillary Clinton, of course, may testify too down the road after she figures out what script is to be prepared for her, because maybe they got to come up with some more details on who gave the stand-down order. And then there's a lot of allegations about, maybe they won't let these people testify under certain circumstances. One of the big things is for the CIA director, who's not the CIA director anymore. See, when he is the CIA director, he can't plead the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. Can't incriminate yourself. But as a private citizen, he can plead the Fifth. And because these meetings were happening in secret, we don't know if he pled the Fifth, do we? Hillary Clinton, same thing. Secretary of State, she can't plead the Fifth Amendment. If they really got her by the short and curlies, fire her from her job, she goes in there as a private citizen, she can plead the Fifth. Can't incriminate myself. Or as Sergeant Schultz used to say in Hogan's Heroes, I know nothing, nothing, nothing. So the computer from the mistress, Paula Broadwell, was seized by the FBI The beauty of it is, like, they made an appointment to do the raid. A raid by appointment. It gives you lots of time to destroy the evidence or get rid of other computers or something. But still, even still, they got a computer, and I think they got 2 computers. It was just full of all kinds of classified information that wasn't stored in a classified place on a classified system. So she lost her security clearance. They say they stripped her of her security clearance. Well, I think Patraeus has been stripping her for a long time, but not for her security clearance. She's an Army reservist at West Point, and West Point graduate. So it's not like she's the dumb blonde. She's more the femme fatale. And it's probably been hook, line, and sinker involved in a lot of these issues. But there's a law for the rich and a law for the poor, because Bradley Manning, the private, he just got his ass kicked and they put him in prison. They throw the key away, and he's probably never going to get out again as long as I'm alive, or anybody else really around my age. They're going to lock him up for so long. But this one, they make an appointment. So they said there wasn't anything on these computers that contained secrets crucial to the country's national security. Well, everything's a secret, really, like how much toilet paper they bought, because of probably kickbacks and stuff like that. So the case was so critical, FBI Director Robert Mueller may have to defend the Bureau on this. And then they get into General Allen's emails, etc., etc., etc. Seemingly Broadwell sent something out called the Kelly Patrol, painting this other woman who was getting the stuff as a seductress. I think they all were a seductress, that's how you know. So it's getting so bad now that, you know, probably Larry Flint's going to come out of hiding somewhere and make a porn film documentary about this. Because the other story just, you know, unfortunately is just typical gutter trash America here. Patraeus and Allen asked Jill Kelly to wade into diplomatic row over Hulk Hogan's sex tape, husband's threat to deep fry a Koran. Now there's a mouthful. So seemingly there's a radio host called Bubba the Love Sponge. And Bubba the Love Sponge was going to deep fry a Koran. So they know when they do that, that's going to cause a lot of conflict in Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East, and could result in American soldiers, really decent, honest people, perhaps getting killed and wounded. So General Allen and Patraeus went to this Jill Kelly seductress chick and asked her to intervene with Bubba the Love Sponge so they wouldn't deep fry a Koran. No. That can only happen in America. So seemingly Bubba the Love Sponge, that's Jill Kelly there, I guess. The femme fatale, you see something like that, guys, run, it's dangerous. There's Bubba, fine gentleman if there ever was one. And that's his wife. And you can get a Bubba t-shirt there, you know. He's in the army, he's got a sheriff's badge on there like he's already. And then, you know, we all know who he is, Hulk Hogan. So basically, Hulk comes over to Bubba the Love Sponge's house and starts teaming with his wife, Heather. And then you can't miss Bubba when he's driving down the street. Guess we know what side he's on. Amazing what we pay for media. So there's the general with one of the twins. The Kelly girls are twins. They had a married name that's different. One of them got divorced. They wrote letters to help this girl through her divorce, even though she was ruled a psychotic mother. They wrote letters to say, you know, oh, she's okay. And that was for the sister Natalie, who was like declared $1.9 million in debt, filed for bankruptcy. She's a lawyer yet too, and all this kind of stuff. So both Allen and Patraeus wrote letters for her divorce and such like that. But basically these girls did work to get Bubba the Love Sponge not to burn the Koran, and saved American lives. So it's a very, very bizarre thing. In the old days, even though it's not politically correct to say, because, you know, they made a deal, like a barter system. It was a tit for tat. But I think those generals were getting a whole lot more tits than tat. Bubba the Love Sponge got revenge by putting a camera on Hulk Hogan and photographing him having sex with his wife and then posting it online, paid an out-of-court settlement or something like that. That's sort of a secret. And there we go. Ambassador Stevens is overwhelmed by Bubba the Love Sponge. So then the lies have to ramp up to be deeper now because we're getting into a more complex story. So it's how Ambassador Stevens was killed and how Patraeus affair factors in. So it gets into Clinton and how she denied requests for extra security that Ambassador Stevens made. Holder, Patraeus, and Obama, and this is the big one, the wooden stake in the heart, watched 7 hours of drone video of the whole attack. They saw the attack, they saw him getting murdered, they saw him getting pulled out of the compound, they saw him being dragged down the street. And the senior officers that we've talked about before, AFRICOM Commander General Ham, Commander of Carrier Task Force 3, Admiral Gayout, wanted to intervene and save the man's life. They disobeyed the stand-down order, were arrested, relieved of their commands, and sent home. They try to mention something in this article that's just a couple of steps down from what we do, that Stevens was involved in weapons smuggling, kind of like the Eric Holder type thing, you know, where you give arms to the enemy to kill your people with, because it was probably the Obama White House and the Clintonistas and Eric Holder that gave the arms to these guys to kill the ambassador. He didn't do it. I used to find it hard to believe that he did it. We have posted on our website, and we've talked about it. We showed pictures of him over the body of Gaddafi on our blog and posting on this. This is the thin edge of the wedge, the point of the sword, the conspiracy cafe angle. We go right for the throat. We don't waste time with Bubba the Love Sponge. And then there's the other picture of the warehouse with the money. That's like, you know, I'm in a big room here, right? And it's like it was filled floor to ceiling with money. Stuff you gotta, I used to work in the armored car industry. I know all about that. You gotta move it with a forklift. That's how much paper you got. Paper's heavy. It's wood. It's like from trees and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, you got 50 of those California redwoods or something like that all in one room. You need a forklift to move that shit. And he knew. He was Clinton's translator. They leave that out a lot in a lot of stories and all that kind of stuff. He spoke French and Arabic. He was the man with the provisional Libyan government. He probably knew they faked Gaddafi's death. He probably knew where all the money went. They tortured him to find out what he knew, and they killed him. That's got to be the most logical conclusion. Because the last cover story, or the most effective cover story, is confirmed by a Council on Foreign Relations member, now that we allude to conspiracies on Conspiracy Cafe, Dr. Steve Pesnick, that Stevens was running guns and missiles into Syria. So if it's coming from the Council on Foreign Relations, it's got to be gospel. Sort of. Then another piece came out by Webster Tarpley, and it makes me wonder where Webster stands, because it was a major disinformation piece saying that it was really the Mormon Mafia and Mitt Romney that caused this to happen. But they're not in control of the military forces, and they can do nothing with the stand-down order. So I find it very difficult to believe that the Republicans, the Mormon Mafia, or Mitt Romney had anything to do with this. Plus, if they did have something to do with this, the only way they could achieve anything effective from it would be to pin it on the Obama administration somewhere and say they did it. Without that, it's qui bono. Who benefits? They're in no position to benefit, and they never played the Trump card once. They just said, we want more information, and we think the Obama administration was incompetent looking after Ambassador Stevens. But they never went for the juggler. They didn't even try to kick him in the shins. In fact, it was pretty much a abject failure on what they did. So there's only one possibility that fits the key bono. He was killed by his own people on the inside because they issued the stand-down orders. They arrested the general staff. Webster Tarpley, I believe it was in his article, they put in a lot of other people that were military people who were arrested or discharged recently of command ranks, but most of them were all for cause, and a lot of them for a little hardying too hard. So it really had nothing to do with anything of substance. So I look at it, the most plausible story, especially if they're watching it live on TV. That is reality TV, man. Watching them drag the guy down the street and kicking him to death. Don't get any more reality than that, and then you tell your own people not to help them. It's not good. Not good at all. Maybe some more good men will die. And Bubba the Love Sponge will have to get some real good stuff on video to expose this. We got to burn more than the Quran. We got to burn their asses and find out what really happened to this man, because he may have been an American patriot trying to come to we the people with the truth and the story about what's really going on and how the world's manipulated and controlled by a cabal of the elite rich. And that isn't changing, because we're going to go to Britain and talk a little bit about their elite rich, the Levinson Inquiry. Somebody wrote in a major British newspaper a conspiracy story. They used the C word. So it tells you that we're fighting dirty now. We got to say the C word. They call it one of the most catastrophic journalistic errors of modern times. And as we explained at the beginning of the show, they did the same thing to Dan Rather. Cut his throat, sweep him away. False allegations of pedophilia against an elderly Tory party grandee. The resignation of the Director General of the BBC. The demise of the flagship Newsnight program, which would be the equivalent of like 60 Minutes in Britain. Shattering blow to BBC News' reputation for integrity. No one did the basic checking out of the facts, they say. Balderdash, we know. Because as I've been reading and studying on this, I find out on that show, they never released the name of the guy who was supposed to be the pedophile. They never said. It was like the Osama bin Laden thing, right? World Trade Center blows up right away. The media's in there. Osama bin Laden did it. As soon as this happened, same thing. The media comes involved and they say it's a former British MP by the name of McAlpine. But the name was never mentioned on TV. Never. Just said a high personage type person. And everybody was speculating, who is it? So behind all this stuff, the Brits got something called the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. It's kind of like, you know, the media has always said many, many times since I've known them, is, you know, that, do you think we get together in like a little room somewhere and decide what to say and do? Yes, yes, yes. Because it even has a name. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism is run by some guy, British liberal establishment dude called Sir David Bell. He's one of their trustees. He began a campaign almost a decade ago to control Britain's raucous popular press. The chief executive and founder of the charity Common Purpose, Julia Middleton, is also involved in a lot of this stuff. So in January 2005, the Pearson Group, owner of the Financial Times, had an extraordinary dinner where the host, Julia Middleton, and a select group of new Labour era establishment all got together. They all get together and conspire to do something. It wasn't in a little room, it was in a big room, because they don't have anything to hide, really. So this was reported in New Statesman magazine by Robert Preston, now the BBC's business editor, until they probably fire him. And they debated media standards. They wanted to persuade people like police constable, youth group organizers, permanent secretaries, FTSE, chief executives, head teachers, that they can learn to cure society's ills. That there's a collective wail about the irresponsibility and excessive power of the media. So we have to do something about that. So we have to set the media up, kick their legs out, have an inquiry to say, The government has to control the media. It's for your own good. They lie to you. It's Orwellian magic. In fact, that group puts out the Orwell Prize for journalism, which was a fake and a fraud. Has huge implications for the press, affects the expression of 300 years of history of freedom of speech itself. So these assessors appointed on this board of this inquiry all have connections to some of these groups. They call it a giant octopus. Common Purpose's tentacles reach out into every nook and cranny of the inner sanctums of Westminster, Whitehall, and academia. And they don't hide it. Julia Middleton wrote a book called Beyond Authority, a way to force issues onto the agenda at Westminster. Well, I guess we work beyond authority too, because we don't have any authority, at least not from the state or anything like that. We just get the word out. Start putting it out there. Get people thinking about it, pointing the fingers to say, was it you? Was it you? Who's got the money? Who killed the kid? Who lived here? Who did that? A small, committed, and coordinated group of people producing pressure from the outside, 2 or 3 determined fifth columnists on the inside, and the stamina from both groups to keep on and on and on, putting them on the agenda until they eventually had to be discussed. Hitler said the same thing. A dynamic minority can overrule the majority. Using all her charm and flattery, she had drawn him in and installed him as a convenient, useful idiot. These are quotes from her own book. Get him to produce a report that she knew full well would be a perfect smokescreen for her own activities, creating a subcommittee led by someone who did not really understand the big picture, to look into an issue in depth with no timetable so we could get on with what we saw were important issues. Have I ever done this? She says, yes. And that's how easily they control the press. So other newspapers now are jumping all over this Daily Mail article, saying, conspiracy, they said the C word. They talk about Millie Dowler and the News of the World scandal, the hacking of the messages, that it's illegal, that dozens of journalists are under arrest, that the Prime Minister actually brought Coulson into his office and used him as a spokesman, knowing full well that he's affiliated with this mess, probably because he is too. He needed inside information. So these people from the power establishment, this new elite, come in and basically take over the media. And they set everybody up in a big trap. So Common Purpose is like something like gurus, messianic lectures that people pay £5,000 for. Police chiefs go there, bureaucrats, politicians, corporate gurus, entertainment, media people attend these courses. And once you attend these courses, they put you in like a Common Purpose database. And only members can access the database to liaise with other people. So one executive with one of the police forces did this. And then he found out, like, he quit. He just said, like, these are a bunch of nut bars. They're up to no good. And then some of them just show up at his office to say, you're going to buy all your products from us. And he goes, no, I'm not. I quit. I don't want anything to do with you guys. And then you're blacklisted. And then other people who do inquiries under the Freedom of Information Act to find out what these people are up to are put on a bigger blacklist right across the country. They got your name, your address, your phone number from your Freedom of Information request, and you're blacklisted. You're going, well, how did this happen? I'm just exercising my rights as a citizen or a journalist. And you get this. They run organizations like Hacked Off, where actor Hugh Grant appears. They have the Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sue Ackers, who was in charge of a child protection team in Islington when the Evening Standard exposed a long-standing pedophile sex ring in the borough's children's homes. Got people in the right places for lots of stuff. It's not just Murdoch's mafia. Seems to be everywhere. So there was a big scandal that this protection team didn't look after an 8-year-old girl named Victoria Kleinby. She was tortured and murdered by her parents. And this police officer was supposed to be in charge of this protection team, so they make her a deputy assistant commissioner. You know, you get promoted because of this stuff. Another Levinson witness, Lord Blair, chief of the Met, he used to send people to these common purpose courses. West Midlands Police sent a lot of people there. David Icke exposed that. He's mentioned in the article, you know, conspiracy theorist. I read his article. It's right on the money. So these people in the highest realms of society belong to this common purpose. So what we see is they are a controlled opposition to get everything started. So in the end, the guy who tweeted this show to say that they were going to out some pedophile was actually with this BIJ too. So it was all part of their team work, their groupthink old boys network. As it says in the Daily Mail article, these people appear in the same jobs, work for the local authorities, leave, come back as freelance consultants with hugely inflated fees. They're often mediocre, and there's no evidence how or why they were chosen, because it's all part of the secret society. BIJ was working with The Guardian, another news organization, in preparing the WikiLeaks release of classified American military documents. BIJ managing editor Ian Overton leaked major details, put the entire project in jeopardy. So there they are. They got WikiLeaks, something important for us. They sabotage the whole thing. They paid through wealthy channels. I'll pay through this channel, that's for sure, for the BBC to put out what they said was a poor investigation on this Newsnight story. And then their man Overton tweeted, "If all goes well, we've got a Newsnight out tonight about a very senior political figure who is a pedophile," which they never really mentioned in the story, but it turns out to be this McAlpine guy. And we have to say this was all done for a reason. To get control of the press, to set it up, to take it over. Because there's a reason. I'll get down to the bottom here to show you exactly how this worked. That's David Icke's article I'm going through called Pedophilia, but this is how it worked. This is a 1990s article on Lord McAlpine in a magazine called Scallywag. They revealed everything about him 20 years ago when he was at the top of the loop. All the dirt is there, contained in those 4 pages in that article. There's nothing new about McAlpine being accused of being a pedophile. It was published before. Icke is right. The reason they used him again is because he's already been outed. So there's nothing to lose. For him, he's living in South Africa, I think, and lying low. He got, I think, $185,000 from the BBC for this bullshit. But he's already been outed. There's nothing to lose. And the reason they did this is because they don't want any other media ever dare expose the pedophile network. And one of the big reasons is there's the boys with Margaret Thatcher in the day. This total nutbar, Savile, the BBC guy, the procurer of children for pedophiles in government. So I won't rehash Icke's whole article. Of course, we see our glamour child there, David Cameron, with an elderly Margaret Thatcher at the time. And we'll get up to the big reason. So So seemingly the witness said he couldn't recognize McAlpine, even though there's pictures of him all over the internet. So like he put all these pictures up there to say that's what he looks like. Because when push came to shove and he was showed pictures by the police to say, is this the guy who did you? He said he couldn't recognize him. That's not him. This is a clip from Newsnight when it came out. Here's my friend right there, Member of Parliament, hero, Mr. Watson, who said he was told flat out, because I told him about some of the allegations that involved a circle of friends around the Prime Minister, Mr. Cameron. He said if he digs too deep, he's going to get hurt. He said he won't stop. But there is the big reason. Mr. Jimmy Savile, or Savile as he's called, had almost like residency status at Buckingham Palace with the royal family. Good friends with the royals. And alleged to be the supplier of children for all sorts of sordid purposes. So that's why the brakes are coming on this story. They don't want it to go all the way to the top. They want control of the media. Common Purpose is an octopus all over the place. And the media circled the wagons to take these people out. And this guy, who was on Newsnight, was on another station as well, Channel 4, and he said exactly the same stuff. And nothing happened to that show. So it tells you the fix was in. This was the same thing like they did to Dan Rather. And then the other things that add icing to the cake, North Wales kids home whistleblower car is sabotaged. So Mr. King, the guy who broke the story, 68 years old, about what was happening. He was a care boss in one of these homes. He found his well-maintained Volvo S60 was sabotaged. The brakes went out. He went across the road, hit an Alfa Romeo, suffered a broken leg. Then they found the broken brake pedal on the floor of the car. I remember a day like that. They just put a transport truck across the road for me. But I also had another day that, maybe I've never informed people about, where they sabotaged my brake linings. I was off to work late at night, driving through the country roads, pretty much alone, and all of a sudden, poof, I see a whole pile of smoke coming out the back of my car. And then you step on the brakes and you're going like, ooh, air. But just to show the bastards off a little bit, I still probably drove about 20-25 kilometers to get to my point of destination. It's a whole lot of smoke and burning shit coming out of the back of the car, but I realized, well, it's a goner now. I'll never be using this puppy again. But just to piss them off and show them it really doesn't matter, I've been driving shit boxes since I was a kid. And you want to drive some of the best shit boxes, some of these old police cars were even worse. Because nobody's taking them off the road. So driving cars without brakes, or something. I remember being in a high-speed chase once, my dashboard fell off on me. So you're trying to hold the steering wheel, and the dashboard's in your lap. So it's just lucky I had a partner that night. He had to push the dashboard back up so I could turn the wheel. And we still had to go chasing after this guy. So I got a lot of experience driving shit boxes. So for me, it's almost fun and, deja vu, go back to when you were a young lad and kick ass. I remember being in another chase where the brakes failed. I had no brakes. We're chasing this TR6 or something like that. And lucky for us, the guy was a nut. They dug up the road. There's like a 10-foot hole in the road. And the guy drove straight into the hole. And then I'm trying to stop and going, no brakes, no brakes. So, of course, I'm not going in the hole. Just find somebody's driveway and it looks like it's an angle going up and go, okay, gravity, that'll stop me. And just stop like, 6 inches from the guy's brick wall. Just another day having a little fun. So that don't work on me too good. Then somebody's coming to speak for Jimmy Savile. And it's not Prince Charles. It's the Yorkshire Ripper, a guy who killed 13 women and wounded 7 others with a knife. He says, and you gotta believe him because he's the Yorkshire Ripper, that Jimmy Savile is innocent. He's not a pedophile. He's not a bad guy. And by the way, I'm doing well in my therapy, and I'm probably going to go on like some of these little statutory release junkets soon, so I can go to the shops and fantasize about knives and girls. He says that this Jimmy Savile, even though this guy's been locked up for a long time, was an old friend. So who are all these friends? He's friends with the prince, who's friends with the Yorkshire Ripper. And they say the Air Force brought these abused children to sex orgies. That's the Royal Air Force. People have blown the whistle on some of these sex parties. What do they call them? These pay boys who are paid for this. The story gets into a lot of material on this stuff, on this Jimmy Savile, that he was involved with the former Scarborough mayor, Scarborough, England, not Toronto, Peter Giaconelli, arcade boss Jimmy Corrigan, both now dead, that they were involved in procuring children, that there was this wealthy Belgian group who were convicted and in jail called the Dutroux Group, supplied girls to the elite to be tortured and murdered. Well, that's kind of like the byline we're trying to use for little Maddie. Same thing. They steal little girls, they torture, they murder them. They get off on this shit. They're not 50 Shades of Grey, they're 100 Shades of Black. So crime writer Val McDermid wrote in a best-selling book, Jacko Vance was her character, was based on Savile. Jacko Vance, a TV celebrity with a secret lust for torture, murder, and underage girls, featured in the 1997 bestseller The Wire in the Blood. And they talk about Rod Richards, a former Conservative member of Parliament, a closey with Margaret Thatcher's government, close friend of Sir Peter Morrison, and the North Wales children's home cases, having some involvement. And then, of course, our good buddy Tom Watson, revealing the high-level links. This is the way the world really works. But of course, they don't tell us a lot of that stuff. And let me see here if I can summon this one up quickly enough, because this one goes back in my time capsule. As we've talked about this on shows a couple of years ago, I found out about Common Purpose and brought up questions about Common Purpose. So this is one of the officers in the London Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, who was involved in shooting that poor Brazilian man. They just blew his head apart back in the day after 7/7. So of course she got promoted too, or something like that. And we talked about the octopus from Common Purpose, that all these companies are all together. They may be linked to the Bilderberg group. And then we have this little picture here. Lord Heseltine, UK Conservative Party leader at the time, David Cameron, now the Prime Minister, and a Matthew Byrne. Matthew Byrne arrested on 23 March 2010. Children's charity boss affiliated with this Common Purpose, convicted of a string of sadistic sex attacks in his torture chamber bedroom. Victims were dressed as young schoolgirls. So not only was he convicted and in prison, he admitted all this stuff. His victims said they thought they were going to die. In one attack, he whipped a girl until her blood sprayed all over his bedroom walls. He then used a plastic bag to suffocate the girl. The police searched his place, found shackles, a leather collar, a cane, a rope, tape, and girls' clothing. He admitted making indecent images of children. He admitted committing a lewd and obscene act on a Mersey rail train while photographing young girls. He ran an organization called Fire and Ice, which was supposed to help and protect abused children. And he was on one of the boards, an advisory group for Common Purpose. So we have to wonder what the Common Purpose is. This is the chap. I have more articles on, more of the sadistic and sordid things he did. So one of the things Common Purpose made a point of doing is not doing criminal record background checks on their people. And when that was brought up, they just, shrugged their shoulders and passed it off. They keep everything a secret. Their meetings are a secret. Their members are secret. Everything about them. Because what are they? Maybe we'll never know exactly what they are, because nobody's got the guts to really get in there and kick it around. But we try to do our best, because somebody's got to stand up for the kids. Somebody's got to do something. And to a great extent, it appears that that's us, the Conspiracy Cafe people. I think it's just a shame that, sometimes we don't have more time, more funds, more ability to bring more things out. Because, even an old one here from a show I didn't get to talk about was an article, the Norwegian police helped carry out the Norway attack. So they didn't pass on the information about the suspect car in a timely manner where it could have been interdicted and stopped. Now we all know what happened when Anders Breivik went Rambo, Rambo, Rambo. So how did the police allow this to happen? Well, it's very simple. It's like an Operation Gladio type of event. They do this all the time. Cameron was outed on mainstream TV. He was ambushed with a pedophile list. So they're on to him. And then he just recoils and throws it away. I don't want to touch it. It was on ITV. So he's not the slightest bit interested to say, well, I'll look into that. I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to let this happen. So technically it gives a politically correct answer. I think it's very important that anyone who's got any information about any pedophile, no matter how high up in the country, or whether they are alive or dead, go to the police. Because we've picked all our police from Common Purpose, and they'll cover everything up for us. He will take further steps. But he probably won't take any further steps to go after these people. And as we said last week, don't forget, Prince Charles, heir to Vlad the Impaler. No mistake. And I guess we're starting to get a little late on the old sunshine list here. Maybe we'll just show a little bit of a clip of Brotherhood of the Bell so you can see it was an old movie. Something posted on conspiracy-cafe.com. The great actors of their day, Glenn Ford. But you can just see how this works for a few minutes, how you're initiated, how you have to promise, how you must serve the New World Order. And everything's okay until someday they call you and say, it's your time. You must. And if you don't, you're destroyed. Or worse, killed. See if we can get this moving.
house clock, sir?
Yeah. In 22 years, I'd forgotten how cold it gets up here in the morning.
There's a fire in the library, Mr. Patterson. You remember the way?
Oh, yes, I do.
If you'll excuse me. Andy?
Hello, Chad.
Ah, your hands are cold. What about some tea?
No, thanks. It's a wild idea, initiation at sunrise, isn't it?
Not so wild. The early brothers sailed on the dawn tide.
They were tough birds in those days.
You're tougher than you give yourself credit for. Sunrise in a few minutes, gentlemen. Philip Everest Dunning, Mr. Chad Harmon, Mr. Dunning. Mr. Dunning, the Articles and Letters of the Brotherhood. Do you swear that having been entrusted with these articles and letters since midnight this night, that you alone read them and did not communicate their content to any person whatsoever?
I so swear.
Having so sworn, are you now prepared to go forward?
I am prepared.
Mr. Dunning, for over 200 years, Brothers of the Bell have been initiated before this bell, and in the same ceremony at sunrise. 22 years ago, Mr. Patterson stood due east in your place, and I became his senior, as Mr. Patterson is now yours. One day, Mr. Patterson will stand due south, and he will induct a brother of the Bell, and you will become senior. See, in this fashion does the Brotherhood express its continuity. It will continue long after all of us are dead. But that continuity depends upon one thing: obedience. Absolute obedience. If and when you are ever called upon by Mr. Patterson to pay your due bill, you must comply, whatever is asked of you. Well, that bill may come due tomorrow, in 20 years, or never. It will not be a matter of money. It will be an act of fealty, of loyalty to the Brotherhood of the Bell. Now, if you require anything at all, get in touch with your senior, and he will see to it that it's arranged for you. Are you ready for the oath?
I am.
The oath, gentlemen.
I, Chadwick Livingston,
Do swear in absolute faith that I shall reveal no secret of the Brotherhood of the Bell, that I shall respect my brothers and myself, that I will act as they desire, secure their interests as if they were my own. And I pledge this,
my honor, my fortune, and my life.
So I think we can see how the world really works. How the secret societies control the world. They make these blood oaths for the gift of power and domination. One day they are called to account. So these people in these secret societies, whether they be elected government officials, judges, police chiefs, military people, one day they get the call, and they have to answer the call to say, you have to cover something up, do something evil. That is the price for being part of this common purpose type brethren or brotherhood, because they have a common purpose. Maybe that's why they picked the name Common Purpose for that other group. There's a deep-seated global desire to rule the world. That's their common purpose. There's only one answer, I think, to common purpose. Things aren't really happening at Guantanamo lately, and the only way to find out is maybe take them there for the waterboarding season and find out what they're really up to and how. But these people are evil. It's the only reason they have to maintain a secret society. Whether they do rituals like this, whether they're responsible for the pedophilia, who knows? But it's all we do know is people affiliated with this group have been put in positions of power over children and have openly confessed to crimes. We have to dig deeper and look further. Member of Parliament Mr. Watson will. Conspiracy Cafe, your host George Freund will. We'll push them to the limits. We'll expose everything. Like we say in the theme song, we pick the locks. Somebody's got to do it, because nobody else will. And if you can help us with any kind of donations mailed into the studio or sent by PayPal or any other way, we really appreciate that, because we need funds to operate too, and we don't get them from secret societies or nefarious organizations or the CIA. We can only depend on you, part of We the People. We'll be here again next week, same that time, same that channel, maybe from our special secret location, or maybe back in the regular studio. Hopefully we'll be live streaming from here. Anyway, we'll see you then. Thanks for coming out. This is George Freund, your host. This is that channel. This is downtown Toronto. This is where it's at, baby. Good night.
Martyrs knocked them down. 6 fathers still waiting for their 6 sons to come home. 5 mothers who know better and accept that they're gone. 4 years I've been hunted.